with us here. You're the chairman of the Federal Reserve. We have this hearing now before the United States Senate Banking Committee, but millions of people around the world are watching this hearing and watching what you say and also what you do at the Fed. Let's talk some more about price stability, because I think that's so important. We know what the term is, but to the average person, just explain what you mean by price stability, which is a mandate of the Congress gives the Fed.
So we think of price stability as having inflation that is 2%, right around 2%, but it may be a clear way.
Stable prices, stable everything, right?
Yes, but really what it means is that people can go about their daily lives without thinking much about inflation. It comes down to that, and that it's just not an important consideration for people living their lives, taking out mortgages, putting their kids through school, or for businesses that are borrowing and things like that.
It affects everybody in the economy just about, doesn't it?
It does. And
one way or the other.
And when inflation goes up, and you're seeing this now, real wages, really, what matters is whether your wages are going up more or less than inflation. And for the most part, real wages are declining, but not for everybody. I think at the bottom end of the wage spectrum, real wages have actually been increasing. And that's why we need to get inflation under control.
It's going to be harder to get it under control once it's rampant than it would be when it starts out. My question to you is this. We know you have a lot of great, gifted economists at the Federal Reserve that furnish you data on every trend on prices and prices that would tend, dealing with inflation, price stability in the world, and how it affects us here, everybody. The Fed obviously missed the trends there. Was it a question of not having the right data, or was it a question of ignoring the data you had? Because a lot of private, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of private economists predicted where we're going on this inflation, and they were spot on 2 years ago. Was it a question of, again, you didn't have the data, which you should have, or you misjudged the data or ignored the data?
No, it was not about data at all. This is really what it was about. When inflation really just about barely a year ago, in March of last year, started to move up quickly, central banks and macroeconomists really overwhelmingly looked at that as like a supply shock, like an oil shock. And what the textbook says is the shock's going to come and it's going to go, and you shouldn't react to it. And so we looked at it that way. And I would say by the middle of last year, we started to move away from it, and we moved away from it at an increasing rate of speed. Hindsight says we should have moved earlier, and that turned out to be wrong. Not maybe conceptually wrong, but it's just taking so much longer for the supply side to heal than we thought. So in hindsight, you certainly wouldn't have done that, but I think there really is no precedent for this. We looked at it the way it was. There were certainly some voices, and they've turned out to be right so far. Ultimately, we think the supply side will improve, and that'll help with inflation. In the meantime, we're going to use our tools, and we're going to get this done.
About 40 years ago or more, we had rampant inflation in the U.S. We had a chairman, Dr. Volcker, who was chairman of the Fed, and he was maligned for a little while by people, but praised later. But he brought the leadership to the Fed and to the country that we had to squeeze inflation out at all costs, just about. And a lot of it was draconian. You have to do it. Is the leadership at the Fed under you and the Fed prepared to do what it takes to get inflation under control and protect price stability?
Well, let me say I knew Paul Volcker. I'm pretty sure I saw him testify in this room many years ago. I think he was one of the great public servants of the era, the greatest economic public servant of the era. And I hope history will record that the answer to your question is yes.
So you're prepared to do what it takes without any reservation to protect price stability?
Yes.
That would be a departure of what you've done. Thank you very much.